You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. I'll be your host tonight. My name is Ali. You can follow me on X at FF Dynasty Grill. With me as always, my two amazing co-hosts. The band is back together as a three. So I bring on Kev, formerly the FF_GOAT, but he's no longer that no more. He is at the Dynasty Mind. Kev, how are you doing tonight, my friends?
Ali, I'm doing absolutely awesome. Yes, what an end to the season. We've got one of the most fun weeks of the football season coming up with the Wildcard weekend. It's apt because it's called Wildcard. It's usually the best playoff week, isn't it? Because it's got Wildcard in it. But we're looking forward to that from a real life point of view. But just got to keep grinding at the Dynasty side of things. There's plenty of opportunities, plenty of news and stories to be keeping on top of. So, the show sheet tonight's pretty awesome. Can't wait to dive into it with you boys. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing really good, my friends. We've finally done it. We've finished the regular season, week 18. It was nice to put my feet up, not be in any silly week 18 championships because they're ridiculous, and just enjoy some of the NFL action. So, really doing really good. Cannot wait for tonight's show. And so we'll bring on Mags, who you can follow on X at Hot Seat Mags. Mags, all three of our teams have made the NFL playoffs. How confident are you feeling? I mean, we're in a situation where at least one of us is going to get knocked out this weekend because two of our teams are playing each other. But Mags, are you confident about the Chiefs, and how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. Actually, you're right. It's nice to you're right. Kick your feet up and all that, right? After a long hard season. But I mean, in terms of the Chiefs, I'm going to hark back to a line said by the amazing, great voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. He said last year, you can doubt the Chiefs, you can dislike the Chiefs, you can disrespect the Chiefs, but you're going to have to deal with the Chiefs. And that's what the Miami Dolphins are going to have to do. So, of course, I'm confident we're going to smash them.
Yeah, I love that. Great saying. And yeah, I think you're going to be right. It's going to be really interesting to see how our teams get on. There might be a bit of banter going into next week. Who knows when the Bucks knock off the Eagles? But no, I'm not confident about that. Kev secretly, he thinks that his team's going to lose, but I know secretly he thinks his team's going to win. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see next week. But we need to get on to tonight's show, and that will be recapping week 18 of the Dynasty season, and not so much what happened in week 18, but more of an effect on what happens going forward. So this guy has been an absolute unit, an absolute weapon, a legend over in Tennessee, but his reign has come to an end there. So I hand it over to you, Kev, to talk about the King.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified it was Tennessee, because I thought you was describing me to begin with. All jokes aside, yeah, Derrick Henry. I mean, there was tons of really high-profile storylines this weekend, and some on the back of coaching changes. But I think the one that stood out to me first of all was Derrick Henry, the end of the King's reign as such in Tennessee. Just with all the goodbyes to the fans, and he's an impending free agent, and then just to add to the fact that there's been a guy like Coach Vrabel who's left the Titans today. We've got some news in the last few hours. It looks like a clean break for the Titans, and it looks like a full reset, which, yeah, Henry's not going to be back there. I think let's just put into perspective what he's done. So I remember that Thursday night eruption in 2018 where he went for 238 and 4 touchdowns. I was a 1 seed. I was playing a 6 seed. The 6 seed had him in his lineup because his team were terrible, and he sent me out the playoffs. So not bitter about that at all. Not forgot about that at all either. And then since then, just some stats for you. 75 games he's played since then. 7,641 rush yards. 74 touchdowns. That's absolutely unbelievable. Over 100 yards a game and almost a touchdown per game on the ground in that time period. So for me, he's a definite Hall of Famer. No questions asked on that. Just having someone like him in this era, this passing era, truly dominate on the ground. A guy of his size, we've never seen it before. Truly unbelievable. I think let's just put the dynasty spin on it this season. He was running back 16 in fantasy points per game, which is pretty decent for a 30-year-old running back. But I do have concerns about Henry with the clean house, with where he's going to end up. It's going to be a system where he has to fit in rather than where Tennessee have built a system around him. So I think it is the end of his reign. I'd be interested to see what happens with the market. And in terms of my thoughts on Derrick Henry, I think somewhere between what Henry's doing now and what Ezekiel Elliott's done this season for the Patriots, I think it will be a timeshare wherever he goes. I expect him to do better than Elliott's done this season because he's a complete outlier in everything he's ever done. People were writing him off 3 years ago, and he's continued to go do it at such high level. So really impressive guy. I think there's also an open window as such for Tyjae Spears to step up. But what you've got to understand is some people view it as an opportunity. Some people see full reset, no Vrabel in the room. Who's going to come in? So there's a lot of question marks out there. Some ways you can take it, some ways you can go the other route. So I'm really interested to hear about your guys' thoughts on Henry and Spears moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Henry for me, he's what? Keep trade cut, running back 34, do we think it was on keep trade cut? He's a really, really interesting one for like a dynasty perspective, right? I think we've seen this year. I mean, the running back position is an absolute like wasteland. It's a bit of a nightmare. So actually, I mean, this seems crazy to say. Is this like a buy window for Derrick Henry? Like, is this a buy window for Derrick? I'm being serious. Like, you know he's going to sign somewhere else, and then it might be a buy window now, and then he signs somewhere else and you sell him right away. You imagine Derrick Henry signs to the Baltimore Ravens. What's going to happen to his value, right? Where is that going to go? So this is the kind of thing where I'm throwing out little offers here and there for Derrick Henry to see what I can get. I'm not going anything crazy. I'm not paying anything more than a super late second. And I'm probably, well, depending on how it works, I'll probably wait to the draft. And then whenever someone's maybe on the board that they really want for a super late second, be like, give me Derrick Henry. That's what I'm thinking, because I think there's plenty of juice sort of left in the tank still, because he had about the same yards per carry as he did this year. He just had a lot less carries. So I think if teams use him correctly, use him sensibly, then there is still a small window to do that. Kev, you mentioned Ezekiel Elliott. I think, we've seen Zeke this year at times. He still could produce. And I can tell you right now, the 24 running back class, not a lot coming in. Not a whole lot. A lot of day 3 guys coming in, but not a huge amount of guys who are going to come in and be able to like wrestle a starting job away from Derrick Henry. Do I think the days of him being like the lead back, absolute pound the ball or behind him? Yeah, we've seen that this year. Like those are done. But I still think he can help your team, and I still think he can be a really good player in a committee, which, let's be honest, apart from 5 guys in the NFL, that's what everyone else is anyway.
Yeah, I think it's really well said, that last sentence, because it is basically, I know I've said it plenty of times, I've got six running backs, but that can perhaps stretch to 8 that I feel good about. But then after that, you can take it year by year with each running back and just say, yeah, okay, they've got one more year, but what happens after that? And you can always put Derrick Henry into that category if you're going to say the Ravens makes so much sense. I can just see it happening now where they'll win the Super Bowl, they want to go back to back, they'll sign Derrick Henry for a back-to-back run, and he won't have to be the dominating lead back and have this massive workload that he's had in Tennessee. You look at the stats this year, and he's been hit behind the lines so many times, yet he's still produced. He's still got such a high-end motor for someone that size and his age. He's a freak. He really is a freak. So yeah, Derrick Henry, I totally agree. I wouldn't be saying go and buy running backs right now, because I don't think that's very good practice in this early in the off season. It's with so much change that can happen. But yeah, there's certainly a situation where I'd easily offer a 3rd round pick for someone for Henry right now. Maybe throw in a guy that I don't want on my roster. and yeah, especially if I'm competing, really like that. But the other guy that everybody's talking about right now is Tajay Spears, guy that I absolutely loved in the draft process. Obviously, there was medical concerns with the missing ACL, but yeah, what he's been able to show in periods this season has been really impressive, actually. Yeah, it might be easy when you're with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry does all the hard work. He tires out the defense, and you come on with the passes, and you can explode. But if we're saying his cost right now is a mid-second, then I would actually be buying at that price. I think that's a great price to be paying for Tajay Spears. I think he's potentially in a few months' time could be priced at a first-round pick if he becomes the starter in Tennessee. And the thing
there's no way he's going for a mid-second, right? Because people just used a mid-second on him, and he's produced. So why would you just sell him for that, right? I see him. I own quite a lot of Tajay Spears. I'm not selling him for anything less than a first plus. To be honest, I want more than a first for Tajay Spears.
Yeah, and the thing that's really impressed me the most is it's been his pass usage for Spears. A guy that, if you look at his snap percentage, he only averages about 50% of the snaps, and he had the 10th most running back receptions in the league with 52 receptions this year, which is impressive considering he was on the field half the time. So I just think you've got a situation a bit like Rachaad White. He had 50-odd receptions with Leonard Fournette being the RB1. He was averaging about 50%, perhaps less snap percentage. And then the next year, you saw what happened with Rachaad White this year, just that volume. So I just think Tajay Spears has looked explosive, great hands. He's only had one game with double-digit carries, but he handled that really well. So that's interesting. And there is a risk, obviously. If you say the asking price is a first, there's always a risk with running back. Then you think it's going to be a clean house. So will the new coach, will he want to bring in another running back to compete with him? Will they sign another veteran? There's a lot of risk there. So if the price is less than a first, I'm definitely buying. But if it's a first, that's probably where I say I don't want to be paying that right now because there is too much risk. But yeah, the arrow's firmly pointing up for Tajay Spears. And with that, we'll move on to category 2 tonight, which is a really interesting one. So it's over to Mags with 2024 landing spots. Over to you, mate.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit too early about thinking about exact landing spots, but around this kind of time, I like to have a bit of a process, and it's just looking at the draft order and thinking, could they draft mostly a quarterback or a receiver, right? I'm not really thinking about running back, especially in the first round, really. So I'm looking at the first round picks, and I'm thinking, could they, with that pick, draft a quarterback or draft a receiver? And what does that do to the players that are there right now? So if we just go through it, and we'll just go Ali Kev, and we'll go through the first 5 picks as they stand in the draft right now. So pick number 1 is the Chicago Bears. So Ali, do you think they end up taking Caleb Williams there? Do they take the quarterback?
Yeah, I think it came out today that they're not picking up Fields' fifth year option, which was pretty obvious. And yeah, I mean, personally, it might be different. Do I feel they're doing the right thing? Who knows? But I think Justin Fields is a very good quarterback, but I think they have to reset. So I'd say yes.
So then, in my head, I'm thinking, right, not only am I thinking, oh, good, Caleb's going to be playing there, but I'm getting ahead of the market now and being like, I can go buy me some DJ Moore. Because DJ Moore's the number 1 receiver. He's about to be the number 1 receiver for Caleb Williams. I'm thinking I'm going to go out and go and buy some Cole Kmet because he's going to get an upgrade at quarterback, at least in terms of a passing standpoint. I mean, Justin Fields, good quarterback for fantasy, but not putting up the passing numbers that you might want for your receivers because he rushes the ball so well. So I'm thinking I'm going to go out looking for Cole Kmet, looking for DJ Moore before Caleb lands on the Bears and their prices go up. I'm getting ahead of it now. And with the same sort of thinking, Kev, at pick 2, the Washington Commanders, do you think they need... Well, they do need a quarterback.
He's rubbish.
Yeah, right. So if they go ahead and take Drake May, I'm thinking the same thing here, right? Are you thinking if they take Drake May, are you going out and looking for Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, those guys, or are you waiting to see what happens after the draft?
I think it's a great exercise to if you think a certain way that Williams, like just going back to Williams, if he's the upgrade over Fields from a pass point of view, I think it's a great idea to go after DJ Moore. But I would also consider the flip as well. If you're thinking actually Fields is like and sorry to go back to Williams, but Fields is the first QB to ever do anything with DJ Moore.
True.
New guy comes in. Could there be that chemistry? Could it be someone else that they have in? But just coming to like the Commanders and Howell, yeah, Drake May's an upgrade over Howell by quite a bit actually from a real life point of view. Can hide behind his QBX in fact it's points per game. He's only in that position because he's getting behind in games and having to pass to get back. Yeah. So big upgrade on Howell would be Drake May. But when it comes to guys like McLaurin, Dotson, I'm a little bit more apprehensive. I just feel like Dotson, yeah, he's got the first round draft capital, but it wasn't used very well last season. Curtis Samuel had big games. Curtis Samuel's now a free agent. What happens with him? I've always been off on McLaurin, if I'm honest. So I just wonder, like, if they're going QB, are they trying to add weapons straight away? Like, what are they doing free agency? I think if you believe in these guys, now is the time to probably go for them at wide receiver because you're sort of getting ahead of the casuals. But again, my only point would be flip side. If you've not been a believer in those guys already, is that we're not saying Drake May is a guaranteed smash 100% hit. So there is still risk there, even though it is an upgrade over the terrible player somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of the trend kind of continues too with like the Patriots and Jacoby Myers, and then the other two I want to talk about are the more receiving ones, the two teams that I think might end up taking a receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, if they take Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray is going to go up even more, right? So are you guys thinking it looks fairly certain that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go to the Arizona Cardinals unless the Patriots, God help us all, unless they take him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you going out and trying to buy Kyler Murray because he's about to get Marvin Harrison Jr., or do you kind of just wait until he ends up there and then the price is already too high anyway, probably?
I think you just have to take it case by case, and I think Kyler Murray's in a position where he probably already is a buy. I think a lot of people have him ranked too low, and I've got him firmly in my top 12. In my top, I think he's quarterback 9. Yeah, he's quarterback 9 for me. I'll definitely be buying him there. I think they're going to push as much as they can for wide receiver because it's their biggest need. I think the Patriots could easily trade down, pick up capital, but who knows? But yeah, Kyler Murray's a buy anyway. So if he gets Marvin Harrison Jr., he could be valued as a top 7 quarterback in the NFL easily.
Yeah, Kev, same with you with Justin Herbert. If they end up with Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers in that team, do you think that does anything to Justin Herbert's value, or is he someone that's so highly valued anyways, you're hardly going to notice it?
Justin Herbert's such an interesting case for me because he's got all these weapons that are sort of differing towards the end. Heckler, Everett, Allen, Mike Williams, the question mark. I think the player, Justin Herbert, he can do it with whichever crowd. So I don't feel that whoever's added or not added will affect him too much. But I think it's more the flip for me with whichever piece lands with him. That just solidifies it even more for me. I mean, look at Quentin Johnson; he's been on fire.
Exactly. Look, that's all the questions I got for you for the laddies. But that's kind of what I'm in the process of doing right now. Is going out and sending out some trades based on some things I think might happen. Just taking a little bit of a risk.
Yeah, certainly. I know sort of more towards the draft time because a lot is still at stake now, especially with the playoffs. But the teams that are picking in the top 10, you need to check out their sort of local media outlets that get insights about where they could be picking, because it's anything like that is really valuable knowledge to gain. Because if you know that, say, whatever team is gunning for a wide receiver, then you can definitely plan around that. And certainly more towards the draft, there's snippets that come out all the time, and you can certainly get ahead. But yeah, I love the thought behind that in planning for the landing spots. So while I put my trousers back up, talking about Brock Bowers or Malik Neighbours landing on the Chargers, we better move on. And Kev, it's time to drop your pants because we're talking about Breece Hall, and I've put a question on there. This is a rhetorical question. Is he the Dynasty RB1 right now? I'm going to ask you an actual question now. Which running back had the most receptions in the NFL this year? It's a tough one.
I mean, I'm going to guess. Is it Breece Hall?
It would be, of course, Breece Hall with 76, which is 9 more than Christian McCaffrey had. And just what an absolute explosion that Breece Hall has had at the end of the season. He's actually finished as the PPR running back 2, which is, I think, is crazy to think of him finishing as the RB2, considering how putrid this Jets offense has been this year. And you look at the players that are up there, obviously Christian McCaffrey on one of the best offenses, Raheem Mostert scored all them touchdowns, but yet Breece Hall on the Jets is running back 2. And the last three weeks, he's averaged, get this, 33.2 PPR points per game, which is insane. And he's pretty much been their entire offense without Aaron Rodgers this year. It's been such a struggle. But yeah, if you had him and you held him, congratulations, because the arrow's firmly pointing up. And you got to think Aaron Rodgers is back in 2024. I think you have to be excited about that offense going forward. I know I am. I think you have to believe that entire offense takes a massive step forward on what we saw this year, which was horrible. And these factors combined, I just think for me, it has to place him firmly in the RB1 overall conversation. I think you look at the people that are up there, and I've got sort of a top 4 with him, Bijan Robinson, who's right up there. You've got to expect an increase in usage from whoever comes in as the new coach up there, but we're yet to see it. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's going to be sharing with Dave Montgomery once again in 2024, likely. Caps his ceiling. Really like Gibbs in Dynasty, but you just know for this next season anyway, he's going to be sharing. And Christian McCaffrey is 28, going to be 28, going on 29. How much longer can he go on as being this awesome force in fantasy? So is Breece Hall now the running back 1 overall? Do we have to treat it like that? Kev, is he the RB1, or is he in that conversation for you over these guys? And what do you see it looking like with Breece Hall with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback in 2024?
I mean, he's in that tier, isn't it? Because I think what stood out to me is really strong finishes to season from Jonathan Taylor. The news about the Falcons, which we'll come on to in a bit about, which obviously is positive for Bijan. So that his value is going to rise from people's expectations. He deserves to be up there. I think if you're just thinking logically, it's probably going to be Bijan 1 because people were wild for him. He's had a poor season apart from this strong week 18, which has bumped him back up in a meaningless game. But yeah, I think he's going to be running back 1, and then Breece Hall's going to be probably 2. I think if we're just being honest as how the market will react to seeing an early number in the 20s next to Bijan than Breece Hall, because people are ageist, especially running back. He deserves to be in that tier. I think what he's done is fantastic. He's been incredible to come back from the injury and perform at such high level on such a bad team. I think the Jets, they're getting Rodgers back, so Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson are going to see their value spike in time. And that's well deserved. I think you can be really confident in what he's done. Even when he had that bad injury, he still maintained his market value really well. So, no arguments for him being up there, top 2. I'd have him above Bijan personally, just because I think while we're expecting it to be better without Arthur Smith for Bijan, there's always the other flip side to the coin. What if it's another timeshare? What if it's a defensive-minded coach that's not getting the best out of those weapons? But don't want to talk about the Falcons too much. Breece Hall's awesome.
Yeah, and Mags, is he firmly in the RB1 overall conversation for you, or who would you have ahead of Breece Hall right now?
So I've had a sort of a think over the last couple of months, probably the last sort of 12 months, about how to rank running backs. For me, running back 1 in Dynasty, it's Christian McCaffrey, and it's not even close. Because if you want to bet on running back longevity, that's a fool's errand. Because they do not last long in the NFL. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how long they've been in there. We've seen Breece Hall. He's missed half the time he's been in the NFL. Like, he had a massive injury, missed so much time already, and he's only just into his career. So if I'm on the clock in a Dynasty League and I've got Christian McCaffrey, who scored, let's not forget this, 100 points more than Breece Hall this year, or Breece Hall, I'll take Christian McCaffrey, because I don't know how long any of these guys are going to last, because it seems to be a coin flip right now. Running back seems to be a complete mystery. So I'll just take the guy that I know for a fact is going to, drive me to a championship on his own, at least for one more year, rather than a guy who's going to do really well with Breece Hall. He's not going to get you to a championship on his own. And he's got just as much a chance as getting injured and being out of the league as any of these guys. So I'll just take the guy who's going to get more points. I'll just take Christian McCaffrey until the wheels run off. But I think Breece Hall, he's up there with the next tier below Christian McCaffrey, with your Bijons. And I think it's maybe a tier break with that as well. I think I'd put Bijan and Breece in a tier sort of on their own behind McCaffrey. But for me, I'm just going to take McCaffrey because he just scores so many more points. And I'll take a championship over, a couple of years of getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's fair. I can't really argue about it. You didn't really see much drop off at all from Christian McCaffrey this year. So not like Travis Kelce, but that's another...
Tight end 1 in points per game, Travis Kelce.
Yeah, right. We'll move on. We'll talk about him another day. We'll move on to an offense we all agree on has had liftoff this year. So back to you, Kev. Absolutely love this subject.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Carolina Panthers jokes. I don't know why that's so funny. Houston Texans, obviously. I just want to highlight the overall offense. I mean, it's been led by CJ Stroud, who's been absolutely fantastic in a tough situation. It was a lot of question marks heading into season, but he's done fantastically well. I think if you have to pick a QB of the year in fantasy, of course you can look at QB1 in fantasy points per game and say, it's Josh Allen or whoever up there, but I think it's CJ Stroud. It's QB8 fantasy points per game, but I think in that situation, missing his weapons have missed time. Schultz has missed time. Collins has missed time. Dell's missed time. It's really impressive for what he's done. And it was a consensus QB3 out of the rookie classes coming into the off season. So I think what you got to understand with Houston is all the players that are in that offense are getting a boost, because it's a really great story with what Stroud's done. They're in the playoffs. They're going to get dumped out by Flacco, but that's another story. I do think it's kind of gone a little bit wild, the fact that he's QB3 at Keep Jake Cut is above Jalen Hurts, above Lamar Jackson. I'm not quite there myself on that. I don't think he's in that tier right at the top yet, because we've seen other QBs follow a similar path to this. Think of Justin Herbert, amazing rookie season, and then he's sort of settled in that tier below. Joe Burrow's been up there and come back down. I think it's really difficult as a pocket passer to stay up there. There's only been Mahomes that's done it because he's a once in a generational type QB. So QB3 is a little bit wild. I would be selling at that personally, but I think anybody that's got Stroud, they've got to be really, really happy with what he's done. It's been above expectations, and I think it's great for your other weapons in this offense, your Nikos, your Dells, some of the ancillary pieces as well. You're a lot more confident about those guys, and it's pumped their values up as well. So I'll come to you boys, just come to you, Mags, on wide receivers, just where you stand on those two, and then we'll come to you afterwards, Ali, on the other bits is offense, which is it because of CJ Stroud and the system, or can you stick with this guy and keep him moving forward?
I love both these guys. Why they're right beside each other and keep straight cut wide receivers 15 and 16, which is really, really interesting. We got Nico Collins, who had the better overall season, like quite for me anyway, at least, was clearly the number one target there. But then Tank Dell, let's not forget he's a rookie, right? He's a rookie that a lot of people kind of wrote off because of his size. He came in and had a really, really strong start as well. So I'd expect Tank Dell's numbers to start creeping up as well going into year 2. I think if I was gun to the head, who you going to choose? I would pluck for Nico Collins out of the two, just because I think he's more of the safer play. Tank Dell, we've very rarely seen someone of his size really succeed in the NFL, and now kind of teams have an off season to plan against him and understand what's happening. And I mean, I hate to say it, but take the Texans seriously, right? I think a lot of people maybe didn't do that this year. So it'll be interesting to see how he's schemed up against. Now people know how he works and operates and can maybe use his size against him a little bit. But I don't think you can really do that with Nico Collins. He's too big, he's too strong, he's too fast. So he would be the guy I would take ahead, but I'm happily going out and picking up some Tank Dell too. I don't know what his price is. It's probably way too high like at the minute because of what he's done, but maybe give it a little while. People might remember the injury more than the way he played. I'm going to be looking to try and buy some Tank Dell as well. And Nico Collins, man, the price of him got to be at least the late first, right, for Nico Collins, right, boys?
Mm-hmm.
More?
Yeah. 100%. If you're only paying a single first for either of these two guys, then stay like
playing 3 leagues.
Yeah. I mean, the answer for me is just whoever's cheapest out of these two is the guy that I want to go after. But in realistic terms, in proper leagues with proper managers, nobody's selling these guys at all. So yeah. The other two that we want to mention are obviously Dalton Schultz and Devin Singletary, who both had fairly decent seasons this year, both on 1-year contracts. So Dalton Schultz signed a 1-year, $6.25 million contract. We've seen Dalton Schultz be relevant on the Cowboys, so he's done it with more than one team. He's not uber talented, but I do think that the NFL sees him as a top 15, top 10 sort of tight end where he's obviously desirable for teams, and I think he probably re-signs. I think they've made the playoffs. They're going to want to keep a lot of this team intact. I think he probably re-signs for another short deal, similar money, probably gets a little raise because they made the playoffs and he had decent figures this year. So I'm happy to continue with Schultz. If anybody has him valued too high, I'd be happy to try and sort of tier up to the next tier. But I'm happy to hold Schultz at the minute. And then Devin Singletary, he's the one that I'm more interested in, to be honest, because I've always been a bit of a fan of Devin Singletary. Even when he was at the Bills, I felt he was undervalued on what he was producing. Always looked like their best running back. He signed a 1-year, $2.75 million contract. He's obviously going to want an increase because he's been fairly good this year. He's been their lead running back. From week 10, when he was actually given more of a proper workload, he's actually the RB9 in total points. The points per game was RB13. So 14.3 PPR points per game it's not spectacular, but it is useful, especially when you're challenging for titles. You need to have the depth because there's so many injuries that go on. Devin Singletary is a guy that you want on your roster because I've got no qualms. He's going to find himself a role, whether it's a starting job, because I think there's plenty of starting running back jobs in the NFL, and he's proven that he can have it. So, yeah, I'm happy to try and get him in a cheap deal. I think the sort of the deal where you want to pick him up, you don't want to be throwing picks at him. It's just get him in part of a bigger deal, because if people aren't contenders, they don't want people like this on their roster because it's an older running back. They want the picks. They want the younger guys. So getting packaged up, and yeah, I've got a slight interest in both of these is my answer.
Do you know what I've got? I quite like Brevin Jordan, you know. I don't quite know why, but I just think him and CJ Stroud have a nice little link up starting to develop. I sort of noticed it towards the back end of the season. So if Schultz doesn't sign, he might be someone to keep your eye on because he's super athletic tight ends, and yeah, he could be someone to watch out for.
He was he was a DFS darling, wasn't he, this year, filling in when he was ultra cheap. and he got plenty of points that couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really interested one to maybe throw in there. You don't want to roster too many tight ends, but I don't mind with guys that have got a slight ceiling. So we'll move on to the fifth subject tonight, which is over to you, Mags, again. And it's playoff fantasy football. So I can't wait to see what this is.
Yeah, this is just for the degenerates out there that are like already itching to get back into things and like just can't wait over a week to start playing some fantasy football again. This is something brand new to me. I've never done this before. I'm about to draft this Friday in my first ever like fantasy football playoffs, like tournament bracket, I think we might call it. It's you draft a team, but you kind of have to think about the players you're drafting because let's say you draft Tyreek Hill and when the Chiefs crush the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill's out. You can't use him again, right? You can't redraft other players in. You draft what you draft, and that's it. So you kind of have to weigh in who you think's going to last a bit longer in the playoffs, matchups in the playoffs, that kind of thing. I'm quite fascinated by it. I think I'll be absolutely terrible at it, but have you guys done anything like that before? What kind of strategy would you have for that? Kev, we'll go to you first. You've done this before?
I've done the NFL Playoff Challenge, which is where you pick your lineup and you get multipliers for more games to play on the bounce. If your players are eliminated, you can replace them, but you just get one multiplier rather than the 2, 3, 4s, etc. So if you can pick two teams that play in the wildcard round and make the Super Bowl, you've absolutely crushed your competition that way. You've got to have some sort of tournament tree and plan out who you think's going to progress. That'll be the starting point on that. And I think there's a couple of interesting teams which you can see going one of a couple of ways. The first one is the Chiefs. Like, I can see a scenario where they'll lose at the weekend, or I can see another scenario where they win the Super Bowl. Like, for me, they're a team that's got the biggest range of outcomes from the AFC side. And then NFC side, I don't know what it is, but it's the strongest I've seen the Cowboys and felt about the Cowboys. Like, they've made the playoffs pretty well over the years and done nothing, which has been quite funny as an Eagles fan, but it just feels a little bit different this year, so I think they'd be a couple of teams that I'd be really interested in going for in this format because they're not the favourites, but you can tell a story where if they turn up on the day, they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Ali, what about you? I mean, the real question is how high you drafting Joe Flacco, right?
Mate, I was literally about to point out two wildcard teams that I think could have a say in the playoffs, and one of them is the Cleveland Browns. I would love to see them go into Baltimore and knock them off. Joe Flacco, it would be
so good.
It would be perfect. And the other team that I think is actually going to win this week is the LA Rams. I think they're going to beat the Detroit Lions. So there's plenty of fantasy relevant players on the Rams. If you're saying they're going to win this week, they'll then face probably the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are beatable. They're sneaky. So I think clearly you want to go for the Ravens and 49ers, who, they're most likely to get to the Super Bowl. They're likely to play one less game than perhaps if a wildcard team get there. So there's an interesting strategy. I just wouldn't be picking anybody from the Steelers, Packers,
Eagles.
Are you sure? Because the Steelers have been resting Kenny Pickett for a few weeks to get ready for the playoffs. So.
Oh, well. Yeah. I don't really know. Kenny Pickett's dead to me. And I mean,
it just shows you what he is, though, doesn't it? If Mason Rudolph can lead that team to the playoffs, what is Kenny Pickett?
Yeah. They've got a better chance with Mason Rudolph, I'm afraid to say it. Kenny Pickett is awful. Look at the number of passing touchdowns he's had in his career. It's pathetic. CJ Stroud had that halfway through his rookie season. It's pathetic. But yeah, that's a really, really interesting strategy. Don't go for them three teams, put it that way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing. It should be a whole lot of fun.
And talking of a lot of fun, this last subject is the most joy I perhaps felt all season, other than winning some championships. And I'd love to have some party poppers go off right now, because we're talking about the Atlanta Falcons, where the dream finally came true. And just with that title, there was a famous saying from Martin Luther King one day where he said, "I have a dream." And our dream, boys, it came true this week. And yeah, after a third straight season of finishing 7-10, Arthur Smith has finally got his marching orders. What an absolute embarrassment that organisation is. I mean, Arthur Blank stood up there yesterday, or was it today, saying, "I've got no regrets. I didn't want to go after Lamar Jackson." Well, they probably wouldn't have got Lamar Jackson, but when they had the division at their mercy, he's literally there for the taking, and they didn't swing for the fences. That's pathetic for me. And yeah, anyway, fantasy managers are absolutely celebrating around the world, because it's been about time that Arthur Smith has got his marching orders. And I don't know about you boys if you had much with Bijan Robinson, but it's just been so frustrating this season to have him, when you just see Tyler Algier, Cordarrelle Patterson in on them, just the most important snaps in the games, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? What has Bijan Robinson done to this guy? And it doesn't make any sense. You take a running back at pick 8. A lot of people question that. They won't question it if you use him, massively as a workhorse. But you pick him and then you don't even use him. It's been weird. But I actually put Bijan in my fantasy busts team of 2023. Now, I want to ask you boys, do you think that's fair? Because he's finished as the RB9. Do you think it's fair that I've called him a bust in 2023?
Yeah.
100%, yeah. Take out week 18. Fantasy points per game is probably like running back 18, 19, which is terrible when you take him in round 1. So no qualms from me.
He was meant to be running back 1.
Exactly. He was a top 3 running back in most people's drafts in ADP. So yeah, he's a bust for me, complete bust. Not his fault, but you have to put him that for the fantasy owners. And I just think with this Arthur Smith firing, we now have to move on and just look at the impact on the major players in Atlanta. So I've just summed these 3 players up. Bijan Robinson is just a clear hold for me. I think everybody's excited to see his usage under the new head coach, the OC. It's just an obvious one. Nobody's going to sell Bijan Robinson now.
No.
Drake London is the most interesting one for me, because I just think his value has slipped this season. I think he's disappeared a lot in games. And I just think people aren't talking about Drake London. They're talking about him more now because of what's happened. But for me, he's more of a buy for me. I just think his value's fallen so much that he's had 2 seasons now where he's finished outside the top 30. He's only flashed. He's never really put back-to-back games together. Obviously, the quarterback situation has had a massive impact on his production. But I think it's a really interesting time to go after Drake London when everybody's getting excited about this wide receiver class, and it's a very, very good one. I would happily trade any of the picks, say, past a mid-first round pick for Drake London right now. So I'd like to still have 2 wide receivers ahead of him, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. But other than that, I'm happy to pick up Drake London. And I think that you can possibly get it done when people are excited about Roma, Dunes, loads of wide receivers that are coming in. They're going to flash. They're going to perform well at the combine. I'm going after Drake London this offseason. And then Kyle Pitts he's a hold or he's a sell for me. I just think people are going to give him a bump in value.
Yeah.
People know the talent of Kyle Pitts. We know Brock Bowers is unbelievable, and I think he's going to be much better than Kyle Pitts. But Kyle Pitts is that last prospect where people were absolutely purring about him being this fantasy unicorn. He's got the draft capital. I just think people are going to put 2 and 2 together with, a possibly exciting offensive mind coming in there. They're going to get a bit too excited. So I'm happy to flip Kyle Pitts this offseason and sell for any of the top 7 tight ends that I've got there in Dynasty. That's the sort of move that I would make for these 3 guys. So Kev, how are you treating these 3 guys in Dynasty? Are any of them interesting for you now? How would you be sort of approaching them?
I wouldn't be approaching Bijan because it's pointless. I think anybody that's held him through a poor rookie season that paid the 101, maybe 102 or silly startup prices, they're not selling him with this news that they've been waiting for all off season. It'd only be an absolute gross overpayment, which would get a deal done. So I think if you want in Bijan, your access is through startups. But I won't be doing that, not at his price. Because I think he will be running back 1, and I don't think he's in a tier on his own. So if he's running back 1 and it's a tier 3, aim for running back 3. I think with London, it all depends on timing and how you see it falling. Because personally, like right now, I move off London for 106 or above. Not even necessarily wide receiver, but like if you're getting a Bowers or a Jaden Daniels or somebody like that, let me re-roll on that pick and see what happens with it. See if there's a Jaden Daniels on the clock, for example, there might be another owner in your league that needs QB and want to give you a different wide receiver. And you've got to think as well, when these rookie wide receivers come in, because of how good this last class was, Drake London, he's going to fall down. So Marvin Harrison's going to be above him. Nabes is going to be above him. Probably Dunze and Franklin might be in or around or above him. So you'll have guys like your JSN, your Jaden Reeds, your Rashi Rices. People see that number next to the name and think, well, they're pretty young. Yeah, Drake London's pretty young as well, but he's been in the league a year longer, which obviously means that he's old and terrible at age 22, 23. So just be wary that Drake London, from no fault of his own, is going to drop, regardless of who, unless it's like the Messiah comes in at coach. Bill Belichick, maybe. Maybe not. I think on Pitts, I'm slightly different. I think where Pitts is going now, tight end 8, tight end 9, starting to get interesting again. I'm not saying I'm going to be going over the top, but if that's a big tier from like, I don't know, tight end 4 to tight end 9, and he's at the bottom of it, that's where I start getting interested. So let's just see what happens if tight end whisperer Bill Belichick comes into town. Who knows?
And Mags, the Falcons, this is just bizarre. They pick number 8 for the 3rd year running. Do you think they're going to go after a rookie quarterback, or do you think they're going to target a veteran? What would you prefer for the skill players, to have a rookie, perhaps someone, take a risk and a hit on someone like a CJ Stroud coming in and elevating all them players, or would you prefer someone like a Kirk Cousins type player to come in and produce what he has done so far?
I mean, first of all, can we just appreciate
that's brilliant.
Just that Arthur Smith is finally gone. I mean, wouldn't it be the most Falcon things ever to draft Brock Bowers, idiot, right? That would just be just really blow everything up. But there is a world where Jaden Daniels goes to the Falcons. That's really exciting. I think that's a real. We kind of drooled a little bit over like what Lamar Jackson would have potentially looked at the Falcons, and hey, they really should have went out there and tried to get him really a lot harder than they did. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, he can come in. Obviously not as good as Lamar Jackson, but he's a hell of a good runner and he's got a pretty good arm as well. So he would be really interesting. I don't think outside of Daniels, I don't see them going for a wide receiver. I don't know. They might end up going for a Rome Odunze. They have been trying to build a basketball team, so it would be interesting if they took London Odunze and Kyle Pitts and that sort of high flying offense. That could be quite interesting. So it's hard to know what they would do. I wouldn't be shocked to see them move up and try and get a quarterback and just be really sure. I think Jaden Daniels is a really nice fit for them, just for the way that they play. Like play action with Jaden Daniels and Bijan Robinson, that's a lot of fun. So that's what I would be doing if I were them. But if they can't get it done and Daniels goes off the board, I think at 8, that's too high to take Michael Penix Jr. It's too high to take Bo Nix or any of these other guys, JJ McCarthy. So they might end up plucking for a wide receiver like Odunze, because I think Neighbors will be gone. I think Bowers will be gone, and that would shock the world as well if they did that. If not, they'll go, I don't know, cornerback, edge, just one of those other skill positions, and it might not be a talking point at all. Kev, I will say I'm in pretty much complete agreement with you about Pitts, so he's getting interesting to me as well. I kind of, if that value drops, I'm like, okay, I might see what I can do with him. And just quickly on Drake London, my unplant of the year for 2023 was Drake London, so you're welcome.
We've got hits and misses next week.
Yes, a little bit too early. I just think Kyle Pitts, his value is going to creep up. Interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, but I think people are going to put 2 and 2 together. But Drake London, great shout, Mags. We'll talk about that perhaps.
Although my internet cut out, if you remember. I just said London Bridge is burning down, and then my internet cut out. I had a whole thing ready. Like, I'll say it next week.
And then before we wrap up the show, our good friends of the Fantasy Wildcard Rewind, Lewis Wood has got a new website out today called, so go to it, thedynastypancake.co.uk. Brilliant name. He's a brilliant guy, really smart guy, and he's wrote up about the Arthur Smith situation that we've just mentioned, and the Washington situation as well with Ron Rivera getting his marching orders, and the impact it's had on them players. It's fantastic read, so go and check it out. And going forward, any sort of head coach openings and situations that go on, he's going to sum it all up really well for Dynasty. So go and check it out. And with that brings us to the end of tonight's show, where we have recapped week 18, the full season, the Dynasty season. The fantasy season is over. It's time for the playoffs. So we're gonna carry on right the way through the off season. So stick with us. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcards and at Wildcard Dynasty. And join us for our show every Wednesday. Now we enter the off season. Next week we're going to be recapping our hits and misses. You may have had a little bit of a preview there from 2023 and what we've learned. So tune in. Thank you for once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.
When you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.